Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar on the high cost of burnout and how to avoid it, most importantly, because don't we all want to avoid it instead of getting stuck in that? We're going to talk a lot about, initially, we're going to talk a little bit about defining burnout and what it is, what the symptoms are, and then we're going to really share more ideas on how we can avoid it in the first place, or certainly address it if you're already in a state of burnout. So just that's what you can expect here. And let's go ahead and start. So I want to ask you, how do you define burnout? Before we get started with defining it on our end, I really want to know how people who are listening in define burnout. So if you can just write that in the chat box, or we have a small enough group, I'm happy to have you unmute. You have that option as well to just say it instead. Great, Tina, thank you. Not as much motivation for the work. Exactly. You're feeling maybe especially unmotivated, and maybe in the past, you feel like you've been able to really perform and get all your work done. Now you might be struggling with keeping motivated to even do what's required, much less step up to maybe extra requests and things like that. Absolutely. And thank you for yours as well. Lack of interest. You may lose interest in things that normally, excite you and interest you. And that's not just work, things. That could be your personal life aspects. Maybe, certain activities used to be really of interest to you. And now you're just kind of not so motivated and not feeling that anything interests you. And that's an issue as well. Absolutely. And let's see, someone else mentioned mental exhaustion. Oh, that's a really good one. Just feeling exhausted, kind of like this picture, right, that I have here. In the picture, we have, we just have a person who's like leaning over their desk, right? They look utterly exhausted, right? And I love the little bar energy levels showing low, like totally depleted of their normal energy, right? Like it's just a whole, that image just really speaks to me. So great. Anything else coming? Those are some really good things. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's awesome. And I'm going to put my camera on and see if it will actually hold here without making me choppy. So all of those, right? So those are good definitions or good things about how you define burnout. But let's look a little further here. There's some additional, you covered some of this maybe, but burnout is really, it's this state of complete, emotional, physical, mental exhaustion, right? And it's often caused by, prolonged stress, right? Or excessive stress. So it might be that, you were able to do, step up and take on additional work, if we're talking about workplace burnout, right, for a long time. But after a period of time, say you've been doing that for 6 months or even a year, helping cover someone else's position that still hasn't been filled, for example, right? That totally wears you down. And after a period of time, chances are you're going to feel burned out, which, as we say, right, just burned out, exhausted, not really able to, do maybe the great job that you even used to do, right? So it comes from, as I said, kind of that feeling of just, give, right? You're emotionally drained. You feel like you can't give anymore. You're, trying to meet the constant demands that are, on your, plate or, of you. And after a certain period of time, you just get to that drained level. And that's no place that's fun to be, right? And burnout can happen in so many different areas, right? We're going to be talking about it in general, but we're also going to talk a little bit about, job search burnout in particular, right? That's where people usually associate burnout with, but you can certainly have burnout with the jobs, your job burnout, right? But then you can certainly have it with your job search burnout. Say you've been looking for a job for a long period of time and it just, for whatever reason, nothing's panned out, right? That can get really depressing, right? And it can just lead you to feel utterly exhausted and kind of at wit's end. What else can I do? I'm doing everything I can, and still I'm not getting the job. And so that can really, really be frustrating. And, I get that. And sometimes you can be burned out even in your personal life, right? Maybe you're the kind of person who takes on, too much or can't say no, and you like to help people. And so you're very involved with, maybe you're on boards, and maybe you're on, you help with, returning volunteers. You're one of the folks who really helps and mentors folks like that. And you give, give, give. But after a certain period of time, if you're not doing other things or you're not cognizant of it, you're going to reach probably that state of burnout. It's very common, and it's someplace that none of us want to be, because it's not fun, right? So I have a slide here on what is job burnout, and as compared to other kinds of burnout, right? So it's really it's a special type of work related stress, right? Where you are physically and emotionally exhausted. I like this definition from Mayo Clinic, right? That also involves a reduced accomplishments, or the loss of personal identity, or gratification, or fulfillment, right? When you're burned out, it's hard to feel you're not fulfilled, right? They're kind of opposite things. When you're burned out, you're totally depleted. When you're fulfilled, you're feeling you're doing good work, you're making a change, you're affecting, right, change, you're happy in what's happening. So it's kind of the opposite, right, of that. So your brain can only take so much, right? And so here they talk about, your brain chemistry, alters kind of to compensate for, that elevated, the levels of cortisol, which are what come up when you think of, like, historically, right? We have that fight or flight syndrome, right? You're either going to fight or you're going to run. And that cortisol kind of comes up, and and that gives you the energy to do one or the other. And so that's involved as well. We're going to talk about some of the symptoms, and here there's a few things that, talk about what burnout, why it can be dangerous, right? Why burnout, it's not just an inconvenience. It can be dangerous in many ways, right? Here, there's a few that are outlined. You might people sometimes turn to more dangerous methods, of self-medicating, right? Or they might start drinking more, or other types of drugs, or things like that, right? So there's things that can happen because you're trying to escape, right? You're desperate, you're feeling that you're just so burned out, you can't handle this anymore. You're trying to escape from your reality, right? And find at least this temporary sense. And that's what, for example, alcohol might provide, that very temporary sense of release, or just, you think you're unwinding, but it can be a really slippery slope, and be difficult as well. So beware, right? I want everyone to be, cognizant of job burnout. Another one that's not listed here that I like to mention is burnout definitely can lead to feeling depressed, right? You're feeling down, all of that. And depression is a very common, it's a very common mental condition. And yet it's one that so many people don't talk about, because they feel ashamed, they feel lesser than, oh, I should be able to do this, I shouldn't be so weak, or they associate all these different things with depression, which is, depression is a condition. It's a mental condition. It's a medical condition, right? And there is treatment, and there's help there, but it is a very serious medical condition, and one that you want to get help on, right? And it could be something. So not being ashamed of that, but rather looking at it as any other condition, right? It's like diabetes, perhaps, right? Would you be ashamed to go in for diabetes? No. So getting the help you need that way, if it does get to a level of depression, because it is really important that we take care of ourselves, and don't go down those kinds of don't spend more time in those kinds of unpleasant, difficult environments than we have to. So here we have some other symptoms of burnout, right? So in job burnout, for example, do you find yourself wondering, why did you get into this job in the first place? Maybe even regretting it. Oh, why did I take this job? I should have taken X job. I had two opportunities. And it's obviously normal when you're down about your current job to look at the other one and see the bright side of that. Maybe, oh, I would have been better in that one, and it was a better fit, and it's easy to latch onto that, right? But that's a very, very common sign of burnout, right? Where you're reevaluating, your career, your job, your entire, sense of being, right? And then, as we were already saying, overindulging in things just to, feel better or to not feel, to numb the pain that comes with burnout, right? And then another one that's really common and that people don't always associate necessarily with burnout is finding it hard to concentrate, right? And that's a really common one, right? It's hard to concentrate anyways sometimes, but then when you're burned out and you're feeling totally depleted, and you're not getting enough sleep, things like that, which we'll also talk about, it's easy to then, lose concentration, and it's even harder to do your work. What normally would have taken you 10 minutes might take you an hour because you keep getting interrupted in your concentration. You can't keep your focus, right? So, and then another one that they talk about is, are you troubled by potentially stress-related ailments, other kinds of conditions? I think it's important to note that burnout, although some outlets, right, will report that burnout is now a diagnosable condition. And it technically doesn't have a medical diagnosis. For example, with mental health, there's different diagnoses for depression, for other kinds of conditions. But burnout does not have that. It's not although it's not a diagnosable condition in and of itself, it's more considered one of the factors. Yeah, it's a factor that leads to many other conditions, like I said, depression in this example, or other things. So it's I would argue that it is related to it's a symptom of a medical condition. So that's maybe the way we can look at that here. There are some other symptoms as well, right? Feeling overwhelmed, totally overwhelmed, where it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't, all of that. Reduced productivity. You're not getting your stuff done that you maybe used to get done. It just zaps all your energy. I love this graphic with the person lying on the ground and, underneath the burnout sign there, right? So it can also lead to, you feeling, hopeless, or it can also, one of the things that happens a lot of times when people are, feeling burned out is their attitude changes. Like they normally have a good attitude or maybe a really positive attitude. And, you find yourself being less positive, or even, dare I say, cynical or resentful, or feeling not in a good place, feeling not, of a good, where you're coming from a positive kind of, sense of being. And so, and also just feeling like you have nothing left to give. Like I said earlier, your battery is on zero or close to zero. You just don't have it in you to step up, whether it's at work or whether it's in different, areas, at different times. You cannot concentrate. So that's really important as well. I do want to talk really briefly before we continue on the high cost of burnout, and from an employer standpoint, right? Burnout costs between 125 billion. This stat here that I included from Forbes magazine, and $190 billion every year just in healthcare costs. Right. So it definitely contributes to a lot of other, things, and a lot of doctor's visits and ailments, and, maybe, ulcers, and who knows, those kinds of things that can result from the incredible stress that you feel for, some time. So burnout often it's as I said, you feel less engaged, right? You feel like you don't have anything to give, right? And it's very expensive for employers. They when you're disengaged, when you're burnt out, chances are, you might end up quitting, right? So there's a lot of those, increased costs for employers as well. So it behooves them to try to address burnout as well, and help employees through it. But it's also like as I said, the turnover, it's just it's expensive, right? And if employers can embrace ways to avoid burnout, or healthy If they can help in different ways and have maybe, workplace groups and different workshops or things related to maybe ways that people can keep their stress down or avoid burnout. Sometimes it's even doing things like offering a yoga class. Maybe it's a big company and they have, yoga, where you can take that, and unwind during the day or over your lunch or things like that. So also very important. So let's talk more. And I want to actually ask you for your thoughts as well, on, what are some ways that, we could avoid, job burnout. This one says job search burnout, but really it's, what I mean by this is all kinds of, whether you're doing the job search, which, some of you are, whether you're in a job and you're feeling burned out in what you're doing, what are some of the kinds of things you can do? And there's several that are listed here that, we can chat about and touch on lightly, but I want you to take this time to enter into the chat box some of the additional ways that you've implemented in the past, maybe, right? Or ideas that have worked for you, because others can really benefit from those, and it's important. So things like practicing self-care. And what do we mean by self-care, right? I mean, self-care is putting yourself first as you need to, right? And taking care of yourself, not just your job or your relative or whatever your other duties or, things are, but making yourself a priority as well. And your health and well-being being a priority, because you really can't do all of those other things you want to if you're not taking care of yourself. Because if you're feeling burned out, it's going to impact the quality of work that you do, also your ability to help others in need and all of that. So definitely taking care of ourselves is important. Scheduling regular breaks is also key. Now that's whether you're doing a job search or whether you're doing, your job. Research shows that breaks are really important. And so people tend to blow through breaks, right? Or maybe your job, your employer doesn't really have official breaks, but you certainly can and should take a short break. I don't mean a 2-hour break in the morning, but I mean, take a break for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, get away from the screen. Don't be looking at your phone and checking your social media. That is not a way to make yourself feel relaxed, right? As I think we all would say, social media tends to really focus on a lot of the negative. And I would recommend that you take total time away and go outside if you can. If it's a nice day, like today it is here in DC, step outside, get some fresh air, walk around a little bit, just get some movement. Because I don't know about you, but when I sit for long periods of time and just stare at my computer and I'm either putting together a webinar or I'm answering questions and going through my email, like if I do that for too long, I find myself just like hunching and not in a good, even state. And standing up, if you could do a workstation upright, or at least, working on your posture and really, like not letting yourself just totally, sag or slouch into the computer, that's going to help you be more open and feel more open as well, which can certainly help. And then when I say rewards, I mean, little rewards, right? Not huge ones, but, maybe it's, I'm going to finish this proposal, this fundraising proposal, which is a huge deal, right? When I finish that today, this part, I'm going to take a break, or I'm going to reward myself with, whatever. I mean, it might be, not that food's always good, but I mean, it might be, I'm going to have a decaffeinated tea, or, I'm going to have my special treat at whatever, the deli or something like that. So you also want to address negative self-talk. And really keep yourself positive. And that's really hard to do, especially when, you're in that state where you're feeling you're not at your best, you're feeling you're not able to give. It's hard not to do the negative self-talk, but we really need to practice that positive self-talk. I'm doing the best I can. I'm taking, breaking tasks down, right? That has to do with this as well. And then rewarding yourself when you accomplish, maybe a mini part of a task, right? So instead of maybe saying, well, so-and-so could get this done in 5 minutes and it's taking me an hour and I'm still not done. you're comparing yourself to others, right? And that's not helpful either. So really focusing on trying to be positive, trying to the messages that you send yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Okay. And then keeping a gratitude journal. I find this is a really helpful one. And it involves writing down the things you're thankful for. And I'll often, when I'm talking with clients and I'm, working with, talking with friends, and they're, in a difficult spot, I recommend, every night or every day, what in the morning, whatever, first thing in the morning or last thing at night, or sometime where it's a structured part of your day where you keep a gratitude journal. It can be as easy as writing down 3 things that you're thankful for, and try not to repeat the same thing again and again. I mean, it's okay occasionally to say it twice, but don't just every night say my family, very generic things like that, right? Try to have it be more of a concrete and a smaller thing that you can then break it apart. Like maybe one day it's thankful for your, partner, or for, your, child that brings you joy, in playing games or whatever. It could also be a stress, but definitely, avoiding being sucked into that negative self-talk, right? It can also be, things like, I'm thankful for the good weather that allowed me to get outside for a few minutes today. I mean, very little things, right? So that's another suggestion. And then if you haven't already, and I think people have already started putting in some of their ideas, please do so and put those in the chat box right now, and we'll address those in just a few minutes. Getting professional help when needed. If you need help, don't be afraid to reach out to people. And I'm not only talking about professional help, right? Like seeking maybe a therapist or going to the doctor, things like that. I'm also talking about, or I like to add to this anyway, engage, enlist your support system. Who is your support system comprised of? Is it fellow RPCVs that you can call and just not always be just, talking about how, burned out you are and how you're just out of energy and all that, but trying to talk about other things too, and like focusing on some other things rather than just that negative part that, you're unfortunately experiencing right now, can really help. So what are some of the other ideas? And I'm going to pull this over here and see what else we have. Great. Looks like, we have, I like number 3. Tina says, setting small and realistic goals. Yes. And then rewards. If you aren't receiving rewards or praise from another source, that's a really good point, Tina, because let's face it, sometimes you're not all of our bosses are able to, or the kind of person that is able to do that or does that as a part of their, their standard, way of managing. And, I wish that everyone had the very supportive and praise and, being open and all of that, but it's just not the reality, right? And the truth of the matter is we can learn a lot from difficult bosses as well, situations. And that can end up being something that really helps you develop other strengths, but it can also lead to obviously frustration and maybe burnout and such. But trying to look at the positive of every situation of, is good, not the Pollyanna type of approach, but rather, I am in a really difficult position with a boss that, I'm not getting that feedback from, and, or they're really just not present, or there is no boss right now, or whatever it is. But here's what I can do right now. As Tina, emphasized, setting your own rewards, small goals, and those rewards, so that you can, give yourself some praise, which can also help keep you motivated. It really can. That's super important. Let's see. We have someone else saying art, emotional support animal, and music. Oh, I love it. Those are excellent tips, all of those. I mean, art is a huge one, right? Even if you're a doodler, even if you don't think that you're, an artist, you don't have to be an artist to just do some, art type of just, doodling things, or they have a lot of those. I'm sure people have seen them all over. They have those coloring books for adults that have like, very small little lines, and you're just really focused on making, whether it's a pattern or you're doing and that can really calm your whole, just, it can calm your body. You're breathing deeper when you're doing something like that. That's a more relaxing type of engagement, right? And music therapy. I mean, just listening to whatever your favorite kind of music is, right? Whatever makes you feel calm. I mean, so for me, I wouldn't be listening to like heavy metal types of music. It'd be more something that's more relaxing for me. And that's what I would say in general. But if that is really relaxing for you, then by all means, go for it. And that's fine. It's whatever, meets your needs and helps you unwind. So that's great. And I love the emotional support animal. And I must say, those are becoming more and more common, right? And I see more and more of them all over, right? But a lot of people in the pandemic you have the professional, like the, therapy, dogs or animals, emotional support animals, but you also have just lots of animals that are in rescues that need to be rescued, right? They're in, they're going to be put down if they're not rescued. I mean, things like that where, you may want to think about also what kind of animal would be good, because if you haven't had an animal before and you're getting one for the first time, that can kind of be stressful, right? Especially with dogs and trying to potty train them, or maybe cats and in other ways, and all of that. So thinking about what kind of animal might be good, right? Or maybe just accessing those kinds of animals in different ways. Maybe it's dog sitting for, or walking your neighbor's dog. We're like, hey, I am looking to get out and I would love if anyone wants, me to walk their puppy, I'd be happy to. Things like that can just bring you such joy. I'm a huge animal advocate. I have both a dog and a cat, and they are very much very supportive animals. So great. So other ideas, any other ideas? Okay, so the diagnosis, which I have already covered really, of burnout, medical condition, is it a medical condition or isn't it? And as I said, it's not a medical condition in and of itself, but it contributes to a lot of other medical conditions. So it is something that's really important and serious to address. So I have some tips, more tips here. And then I want, if there's other tips that you have, please, again, share those in the chat box. I'd be happy to include those in this discussion as well. We've talked about some of these, right? But not like, these are more personal things that, for example, eating healthy. I know that when you're feeling stressed, I know for me, I oftentimes crave food that is not so healthy, right? And I'm like, oh, I just need to pamper myself. And so I'll eat maybe poorly. But the fact of the matter is that can actually contribute to further problems and more of a sense of feeling burned out, those kinds of things. Because if you're feeding your body, with, well-balanced meals and healthy food, that gives you that energy, right? Some of the other food, like junk food and such, may give you that initial boost or feeling of like, oh, that was great. But then you might crash because it's, maybe it's filled with carbs and it's, whatever, So thinking about how you can eat healthier, and maybe even having some healthy snacks that are with you at work or close at hand, wherever you are, right? It might be, carrots and hummus, or, things like that, right? That are not, maybe some fruit instead of that candy bar or that pizza or things like that. Taking a break, we've actually, already talked about, right? And, just reduces stress. So get out there and do it, but this does bring up, your vacation days. Definitely take your vacation days. How many of you have in the past at some point not taken all of your vacation days, where you've maybe given some up or you haven't taken them? Just you can either raise your hand and you're not on screen, but like your little hand icon. It's common, right? A lot of people do that. And I always say, yeah, Tina, exactly. I have too. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that, because those days are for me, and they are for me to be able to feel good and have a break and take time for myself, which is important. And it's really important. So, I want to make sure that I do use those. Now, I may save them for a special trip. If maybe it's like 1 year, I'm not taking as much and I'm saving some of them. If you do have the, those that transfer to the next year, to be able to go on some big international trip, something like that. But yeah, you definitely want to use those up. They're there for a reason, right? Exercise is a really important one as well. And some of you may already do. Any of you feel when you work out, you working out is really important for you? Is there anyone like that, where you just you go to the gym or you run and you just feel great afterwards? That's not me. Someone's putting yours out. That I have never been that person, right? That whole just the exercise for exercise purposes, right? So I've never been a gym fan for myself, because for me, I'm in a gym, I'm on the treadmill, and my message that I'm giving to myself, I know it's negative, but I'm like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. It's good for me. I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. It's good for me. And of course, yeah, maybe I haven't found the right kind of workout yet. And I think that's absolutely right. So I wasn't that way. Now I have found ones that help me, but they're more things like taking a hike, going on a bike ride, walking the dog, and things like that, where I can still get exercise in a way that meets my needs. I don't have to be that, the gym person to necessarily, make that work. So I just encourage people, if you haven't found what works for you exercise wise, keep trying and keep looking at some other things that are kind of, that might meet that need and really help you in so many ways. Because those, I think, isn't it the endorphins that your body releases when you're exercising that I think have been shown to contribute to a better state of mind and all of those kinds of things. So absolutely. Yeah. And then, just, finding that work-life balance, right? Where, you feel that you're making that you're, doing what you can, right? And you work and you do work hard, you give it your all. And then you balance that, though, or maybe you don't give it your all, because giving it your all would be maybe doing that 120%. But giving it what, doing, your best to do the best job possible, and balancing it with something else, your home life, your life period, right? And whether you're filling that with, exercise and such, and, all those other healthy, like what we're talking about here, or getting together with a friend, and, or going to a movie, or doing something that helps you release yourself from whatever the stress is, that's contributing to your burnout. So I hope that makes sense. And having fun, and trying to have fun and doing things that are lighthearted really contributes a lot, right? To a better state of mind, which is what we want when we're addressing burnout, right? So great. Let's, Tina, you had a good point here that I want to address here. It's harder because, yeah, in some workplaces, newer employees earn less vacation days, which could lead to burnout and high turnover of more junior employees. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of organizations, well, and not only a lot, I mean, all organizations, you're not going to have, or not all, many organizations you receive, right? So you, like what you're saying is they earn less vacation days. Yes. What you're saying is, if for your first year, you might earn a week. And then maybe years 3 to 5, you earn, I don't know, 2 weeks. And so you're right. In those first years, you don't have as much vacation time. And that's why I think the work-life balance is especially important and really critical to avoiding some of these kinds of feelings. So what other questions do you have at this point that we're pretty much through the PowerPoint, but I want to talk a little more on some things that might be of interest to you. So I want to make sure that we spend the time, what we have left here. We have about 10-15 minutes left if we need them, and we don't have to take the whole time either. But are there other questions that you have about burnout, maybe about beating it or avoiding it? Are there other tips you want to share? Any of those, please put them in the chat box now. Or if you'd like to just unmute yourself, I'm more than happy to have you just state whatever your question is or your point. I like to make these as interactive as possible. I don't like to just talk at you. So feel free to unmute yourself too. Ooh, here's a good question coming in while you all are thinking about what you're going to share or ask. So how can we help an employee or employees who might be experiencing burnout? That's a great question. And it's such a Peace Corps question, right? It's such an RPCV question because as RPCVs, we tend to be the kinds of people who are caretakers, who want to help others, right? I mean, that's why we went to Peace Corps, right? And committed ourselves to, being in a different country and immersing ourselves and really working to affect change and help communities in need. So I think that's a great question. And if anyone else has thoughts, certainly weigh in. I would say to kick it off, certainly, letting them know that you're there to support them, in any way needed. Maybe there's something that you could take off their plate that's a small little, whatever that's just causing them stress. That might be one way, right? But it might also be, maybe it's, hey, do you want to take a break? Today, why don't we take a break at lunchtime? Why don't we go on a walk and eat our lunches in the park? Getting them out of the office. Because a lot of times when we get to be in that burnout stage, it's hard to take ourselves away from our work because we're not being as productive. So we're like, self-flagellating, right? Well, I haven't gotten everything done that I was supposed to. I need to stay here. And we forego those breaks that are so important in reality to our emotional and physical health. So I think those are a couple of ways that you could do it. Or maybe even, letting them know, hey, I understand, or maybe they've confided in you, maybe they haven't, maybe you even, on that walk or when you have them, maybe you even share, hey, it seems like you're really stressed, lately, and I just want you to know that I'm here to support you, if there's anything I can do, let me know. Just knowing that somebody has your back can make a huge difference, right? In making you feel heard or connected or right. I mean, it makes such a big difference. So so things like that. Any other thoughts from the audience on, I'm just trying to think if there's other ideas in that situation, how to help a coworker who might be feeling burnout. Yeah. Let me check the chat here. All right, let's see. Okay, so I don't see anything else, but if people have something, put it in the chat, we'll certainly bring it up. There is another question though. What can you tell us about any trends in burnout? I keep reading news pieces about how much people are quitting jobs due to burnout or just realization of how bad jobs can be, and I would second what you've shared. I mean, that's what I've been seeing more of that as well, which is in part why I thought it might be important to, do some sort of a session on burnout, because I think what burnout can actually cause you to reevaluate, your not just the job that you're in, but your whole career, right? As we said. And so people might be actually changing careers, thinking they're going to not have any more burnout, but really maybe the issue isn't necessarily the company in particular or that industry. Maybe it is. Maybe it's the kind of industry that's like really intense and there's a lot of, last minute this, and it just doesn't jive with your personality. That's fine. Or your skills, and that's okay. Get out, move on. But for other people, I hear, people who they jump from one and they get into something else. And then maybe initially they really like it, but they get burned out too. And that to me is more speaking about how are we, it's more of an issue. I don't want to say it's your issue, not the jobs, it's a combination, but it's something that needs to be addressed versus just job hopping or job skipping, trying to find that right fit where you're going to feel no burnout, you're not going to ever probably find a job that is zero stress. And not that you'd even necessarily want that, right? I don't know. But you should be able to find, a fit that is better with your personality, with your, that feeds into and feeds off of your skills, right? Your attributes, right? That can really make that experience more productive, more pleasant, all of those. So yeah, there really is a lot on it, and how many people are quitting. But I think the people quitting aspect is not always, it certainly isn't always burnout, right? You have people who are either, hopping from, one job, they're looking to move up. So they're getting higher jobs, and that's normal, right? To some degree, right? The job skipping, where you're going really frequently, job, you're maybe here for 3 months, there for 6 months, when that's one time's not a big deal, but if, you learn your lesson, whatever, but you don't want that to be your experience for years on end, because that can then make you more like seen as a job skipper. But I think people are also leaving their jobs to maybe, because it's more accepted in today's day and age, right? You look at, in my parents, or certainly my grandparents' generation, I should say, they had one job their entire career. And, now, the stats are showing something like 12 jobs, or, just there's so many more jobs that you have generally in your working career, and careers, even not just jobs in the same sector. Right. So there's more of that allowance in our world, which I think is a great thing, because I do believe that people should be able to get into and find that good fit. My goal is that everyone does find that good fit where they feel rewarded, they feel there's a good balance of what they're doing, and it meets their needs, and they enjoy it, for the most part, things like that. So that's what I would say about that. Let's see. Good. We have some ideas for, like, helping others. Yep. And yourself, in dealing with, burnout. We have keep focused on better networks. And that's a really big one. You want to make sure that your network stays strong. Like, a lot of people make the mistake when they're doing their job search. Of course, they're activating their network and they're doing all of that. And then they get their job, and they might be in their job for 5 years, and they completely ignore, they don't really do their, any like staying in touch or whatever. And then 5 years later, when they're ready to do another job, they might reach out and be like, hey, would you be or they activate their networks and ask for references and things like that. And you don't want to be that person. You want to be the person that keeps in touch, at least periodically, thanking them certainly after they might give you a reference, when you get the job, letting them know, I'm so excited, I got this job. And, it's, thanks in part to my support system, including you. Thank you for the great reference, whatever. Right. And then letting them know, maybe it's even a holiday card, or just an occasional year, even if it's like a year, later, just wanted to let you know the job's going great, really enjoying it. Thanks again. How are you doing? And putting it on them, and it's a whole give and take, right? Your support network is a give and take. So doing things like that too can help you, even when you're in a rough place, sometimes feeling burned out. One thing that might help you, and I'm not saying for everyone, but if there's some kind of, let's say, volunteer work that feeds your soul, maybe you're not in a job sector right now, but you're in it for the reason for that's wonderful, but you're working toward the other, and you're going to be moving, you see its value on your path. During this time, you could certainly look at doing some, whether it's mentoring or working with this volunteer kind of thing, to feed your soul, so that you also feel that could be one of the things that you do. But obviously you need to carve out time, so that work-life balance. And in that life balance, you engage in things that make you feel more fulfilled. Does that make sense? I hope. And then lastly, we have from Anne, depending on workplace, become a cheerleader, yes, for coworkers, and pointing out what they do well and pointing it out to others at work. That is a huge one, Anne. You are very wise. You've had some really good insight here. Thank you for all of that. That's so true. Sometimes when we're not able to really advocate for ourselves, or we're feeling really frustrated and not recognized, having a coworker just tell you, hey, great job on the whatever report or whatever it might be that you did, that can make a world of difference. You're like, wow, you feel recognized, right? You feel, it's huge, right? And doing it sometimes in front of others at work too, that can be wonderful, right? It's just, I love that. I love that idea. So yeah, that addresses the lack of praise that Tina mentioned. Yep. And role modeling, because systemic, right, change, like trying to role model that, so that becomes more a part of whatever that industry or job. Yes. Yep, pushing for living wage. Yep, real healthcare coverage similar. Yep, finding like-minded people. So whatever feeds your soul, like I said, whatever you're passionate about. Maybe it's like climate change. So you can activate, you can get yourself involved with, there's the RPCV climate change group, right? That's one of the affiliate groups that you can find on NPCA's network. If you go to peacecorpsconnect.org, and you could, I think it's RPCVs for climate change, maybe. Anyway, you can find, connect with those kinds of people that are going to feed your soul. That's awesome. So great. And then during department meetings, we have one final here, and I'm not sure what the first name is, so I'm sorry I'm not saying your name. This person works in academic medicine, so acknowledging others for their teammanship. Exactly. That's wonderful. Showing appreciation. Yep. For and support of your coworkers. That's going to not only make them feel better, it's going to help you be seen as, somebody who's positive and somebody who's, that cheerleader, that person that who do they want to surround themselves with, right? And even when they're looking at promotions, what kinds of people do they want to promote? They want to promote this kind of person who's supportive of others and recognizes not the negative, negative Nelly or negative Nell, right? Who's, always talking about the bad. So it's a challenge to keep yourself positive in times of burnout, but I really, really, urge you to do so. You can find additional ideas. There's so much out there online on this subject as well, on some creative ways to really, kind of re-engage or to beat burnout. So I would encourage you to look at those as well. And if there are any other questions at this point, we have like 2 minutes left. So if you have any questions, you can certainly unmute or put it in the chat box. But otherwise, we will go ahead and end this. And I always welcome you to contact me if you need to, chat. You can reach me at jodi@rpcv.org is the easy one. So I'll stay on for a few minutes in case people do have, if they have other questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I'm always available afterwards. We can certainly do a, consult, a chat on the phone, Zoom, that kind of thing, email. To answer other questions. And thanks so much to all of you. All right, take care. Make it a great day. Bye-bye.